Welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil Vaish, your host, founder and CEO of BoostSolo. My next guest is making B2B marketing approachable and impactful for small businesses, proving that they don't need a big budget to make a big impact. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
All right, I'm excited to get our conversation going. So you've had a successful corporate career, but you recently took a leap into entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, as they call it. Was there a defining moment or sort of a personal realization that made you sort of come to decide to make this leap?
It was a culmination of things. I had been in corporate for a long time and enjoyed that a lot, learned a ton. But I did end up getting laid off twice in 2 years. And that was after 4 or 5 different acquisitions. And I wanted to try something different. I felt that I had learned a lot during my time there that could be used in a better way for a bigger impact.
Okay. And so you didn't want to go back, and you didn't want to stay on the corporate side. It sounded like you just didn't want to sort of be a master of your own destiny or mistress of your own destiny.
Yes, there were a number of things that contributed to that, only partially work related, right? I mean, we're whole people, and I had some health issues. I had some personal changes that were going on that all led me to this place of realizing that life is short. And if I want to do something someday, I had to make that someday now.
Yeah, no, it seems to be a common thread among entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, right? It's almost like there's a seed that's sitting there, and there's an impetus, either external or internal, or sometimes both, that sort of causes you to take that leap.
Right.
So when you started, what expectations did you have about running your business? I'm sure you had some sort of ideas, and how did that compare with the reality?
Yes, I did have some ideas. I originally started out to do online or digital courses in the same space where I'm currently working. And when I took those courses to market, the people I was marketing to asked me instead, would you just do that for us? And so my consulting grew naturally out of my sales process for my digital courses.
Okay, that's a happy accident, I guess, right? Yeah, they sort of turn into clients. That's great.
Right. Right.
So did you find there were any skill or knowledge gaps that you had in terms of that you needed to bridge when you started working on your own?
Well, yes, of course. There's always some of those things that you uncover along the way. The biggest thing I had to overcome, frankly, was imposter syndrome. Of course, I had been in corporate. I had progressed throughout my career. I'd worked my way up to be a VP in a Fortune 100 company. And still, I struggled with that until I started working with clients and realizing that I was truly helping them to make a difference in their business. And there's probably always going to be some element of that, but that was the biggest hurdle, at least initially, that I had to get over.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common thing, right? I mean, I face it too, and almost every guest I've had,
Yes.
I think it's a question of whether people are willing to admit it or not. That's
Yes.
kind of where I'm landing now with this, right?
Yes.
It's something we all deal with, and it's not like you said. It's even if you've got a million accomplishments and you've had an amazing career, you still have it every time you start a new chapter or
Right.
try to do something different.
Right.
But you work through that. I think that's sort of the difference, right?
Yes. Yes.
So was there a moment early in your entrepreneurial journey, and I don't know if it's related to imposter syndrome, where you actually thought, okay, I want to go back to the corporate life? And if so, what changed your mind?
Um,
And I know you're still early on. So.
yeah, it's been about a year and a half now. And I would say yes, but they've been fleeting. It came probably more out of uncertainty and doubt, or I really need a few more clients, and can I wait, or is this a silly thing to be doing, and should I just go back to some some form of security, quote unquote. But I had done that route, right? I was in corporate believing for a long time that it was the secure route. And it's just not. I have found that absolutely not to be true. And so I have had those fleeting thoughts, but they are fleeting. I don't think I ever would want to go back into a corporate environment.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I think a lot of people listening to this will feel the same way. But tell me something, and that's something interesting and I've been thinking about this a little bit. But when I started my career, there was almost like a social contract between employer and employee, right?
Mhm.
Loyalty went both ways, and I left the corporate world in 2008. So would it be fair to say that that does not exist anymore? That contract is broken. Has that been your experience?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I certainly had my fair share of individual leaders who looked out for me and were advocates for me, but it is not how it was probably a generation before my generation, where you signed up and you were there for the long haul.
Yeah.
That's just not the case anymore. The pace of change is so incredibly fast that that's an unreasonable expectation.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I think I agree, and I think, and that's a different story. But so, what is there one piece of advice you received early on in your career? You mentioned there were some leaders that sort of you worked with that you still rely on today, even as an entrepreneur.
Uh, well, those leaders were people who poured into me and helped me to both see the positive impact I was having and point out areas where I needed growth as well. And so I do think about those people still, not even necessarily one snippet that they gave to me, but the kind of the amalgamation of them pouring into me has contributed to who I am and where I am today. So I do think about them in that respect, but there's not one nugget that I look back on um, that I'm using every day. It's just more, people remember how you made them feel,
Yeah,
and that is, it's a powerful thing and can be very positive or negative. And so when you've got those kinds of positive individuals who are on your side, it makes a huge difference in your confidence and your willingness to kind of step out and try new things.
yeah, no, I love what you just said because I actually use that. It's a Maya Angelou quote, I think, right? That
Hmm.
people forget what you said, but people will remember how you made them feel. I use that in presentations to clients all the time. So
Yeah.
I completely agree. That's
Yeah.
very true. That's good advice. So let me switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about branding, right, and personal brand elements. So B2B marketing is a competitive space. How have you carved out a niche for your CMO as a service model? And sort of what's been your secret sauce to standing out in this crowded space?
Yeah, I think when I first stepped into this space, I mean, largely because of the imposter syndrome, when I saw the number of people out offering various marketing services, it's very intimidating. But I have since come to fully acknowledge that there's enough business for everybody. And my clients work with me because we work together, whether it's a combination of personality and experience and expertise, and no one else can replicate everything that I bring to the table, just like I can't replicate everything that someone else brings to the table, right? So it's a matter of attracting your people rather than looking at everybody else as your direct competition. So once I embraced that, it's hard initially when you go out and you put yourself out there and you're told, no, we're going to go a different direction. Um, but then you have to get over that, right? You have to get over that. Okay, I'm not the right offer for that person. There are billions of others I can speak to. So that piece, it's a resilience piece, which I certainly had in other aspects of my life that I had to be very thoughtful and intentional about bringing to this aspect of my life.
Okay. And so were there moments when you talked about sort of like the imposter syndrome part of it and just sort of the competitive aspect, but when there moments when you felt like your brand message was not resonating the way you expected with potential clients? And did you have to adjust your strategy? And I'm trying to also get to how did you figure out your niche?
Yes. Um, well, so everyone does have their own secret sauce, right? Mine was I spent 25 years in the tech and telecom industries. I knew this little space. I knew that small to mid-sized partners in this space, they didn't have enough money for a big marketing firm or a CMO to be on staff, but they needed marketing strategy and execution expertise. So that is where I sought my focus. And it's one of those things that since I grew up in this industry, I know all of the acronyms. I know the weird pay structure and commission structures and how those things happen, where to get marketing development funds from various vendors. I know all of those things that are a huge benefit to the partners in that space. Who they know it too, but they're trying to run their business. So having someone who quote speaks the language of this industry is a really big leg up, right? Rather than just a generic marketing agency. Just like I wouldn't be nearly as successful going into a pharmaceutical company and trying to market on their behalf. This is my space. I've been here for decades.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so did you actually, because that's a mistake a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs make, is right. They broaden the lens when they first start out rather than sort of narrowing it back down to their expertise or they're sort of defining their niche, right? So did you start wider or did you sort of figure that out before you took the leap?
No, it is something I did not start wider, but I've been in marketing for a long time.
Yeah.
You don't want a shotgun approach.
Yes.
You want to try and narrow your message as much as possible so that the people who are listening to your message see themselves and see that you understand the problems that they're facing. So I did target that audience right away. Now, there are aspects of my business that I am broadening out that do translate outside of just this narrow niche. But I don't think I would have had the success I've had to date if I had started there.
Yeah, absolutely. You start narrow and then broad, and that's sort of because a lot of people start broad and then think they can narrow later, right? Which doesn't really work.
Well, right. And people think, well, I don't want to walk away from any sales, so I'm just going to try to appeal to everyone. I'll do whatever you want me to do. But that does not resonate with the person who has an issue that they're trying to solve. They want to see right away that you're the person to help them solve it.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's a little bit of fear too, right? It's like sort of the like let's throw stuff out there and see what sticks
Yes.
versus like, saying I'm going to focus on one thing, which is very scary because if that one thing doesn't work, you feel like you've failed. So, but yeah, I think that's an important lesson.
Well, I think it's valuable, especially in that case, then too, to actively go and seek that, to proactively go and seek that feedback, right? Does and I did do that. So I invested um, uh, quite a lot of money for when I first opened my doors in coaching programs for myself, and I wanted that kind of feedback because I wanted to set myself up for success, right? But part of that is being open to, this is what I want to offer. What do you think? Which can be kind of a scary process, but it's much better if you've missed the mark. It's much better to find that out now rather than 6 months into this when you've been trying and trying and trying and just kind of running into a wall the whole time.
Yeah, no, and I think what you just said is really important because I've met a lot of people, and I'm not going to say it's generational, but there is some element of like fear of sort of hearing the truth. You know what I mean? That people sort of prefer to sort of have, so they go to people who they know will validate rather than give them,
Hmm.
constructive feedback.
Yes,
And you're right, it does hurt, and you have to sort of stand there, completely exposed, sort of be vulnerable to be able to receive that kind of feedback. But it's better to do it early, you
it
know,
is. It
lick
is.
your wounds and then build your business.
And refine and I did when I had my first consulting offer put together. I went to some of those mentors I had in the corporate space, and they many of them did validate me, but there were some who said no, some who I really value, who've been in the industry for 40 years. And they told me with a scalpel, no, that's wrong. That's not going to work for you. And that was painful, but so appreciated and absolutely necessary.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really important, right? I call them angels and truth tellers. So I have two
Yes,
types of people. The ones who you need the support too, the ones who are going to be
of
the
course.
rah-rah, right, to pick you up. But you also need the ones with the scalpel
Of
because,
course.
yeah, it's a combination of the two. I love that. So you're passionate about making B2B marketing more approachable impact, which, as we discussed, is music to my ears because that's a category that needs that. So how do you help marketers connect with their audience on a more emotional level, especially since B2B is so much more about, at least the category feels like they need to be logical, rational, and just product and feature centric, right?
Well, yes, the category may feel that way, but the category is full of people, and people buy from people who they know, like, and trust. And so you've got to have some human injected into your message, right? So that they know who you are, that you are someone they can trust with their business.
Yeah, I agree. But how do you get the clients you work with there? That's something I've struggled with also with B2B clients.
Well, it comes in a number of different ways, right? I mean, so in the case of an email campaign, or website copy, you need to position your copy in a way that shows you understand what challenges your customers are going through. And you understand it because maybe you've been there, or you have helped dozens of other customers with this exact same issue, and you can prove it with testimonials. But it's coming from an empathetic place.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Donald Miller and the Story brand, which positions each business owner as a guide. They're not the hero, they're the guide, to help the hero, which is your customer, get through to their breakthrough, whether that, it's solving a problem that they have in their office or reaching a new sales goal, what have you. Position yourself as the guide, which means you empathize with where the customer is now. And then you show them proof points that you're the right one to escort them through the challenges that they may have going forward to get them to their goal.
Yeah, no, again, I think that's a really valuable lesson because you're right. That's another mistake a lot of solopreneurs make is they think they need to be the heroes sort of swooping in and saving the day, right? And also the empathy part, I agree, because it's not about the products and features that you have, it's the problems that your customers have that you can solve, right? That's kind of what the focus needs to be.
Yes,
And I love that you say you need to show that you can walk in their shoes.
yes,
Otherwise, why would they come to you, right? Because if you
right.
don't understand their pain, you're just flogging your products. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. So I also love that you describe yourself as a decent cook and a mediocre golfer. And it just feels really authentic. And I love that in today's day and age when everything is like perfect and, social media friendly. So how is, being real like that sort of influenced your approach to business relationships and also, especially coming from a corporate world where there's so much pressure to be perfect and
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I'm not perfect. So I didn't feel like I really had to project that. But it goes back to that, bringing humanity into it. Yes, B2B is often about features and benefits, and those are important, of course. But you also need every one of us is a whole person, and we bring our whole people, our whole persons to work, right? And so you would maybe be surprised at the number of conversations that start on my LinkedIn with, "Oh, I'm a mediocre golfer too," or, "Oh, I'm a cancer survivor too. Glad you're still standing." Right? And those things allow us, where a website can feel kind of just like a pat response. Social media should be more social, I believe. Even LinkedIn. Now, it doesn't mean you show what you're having for lunch that day, but I do want, when I do a lot of LinkedIn outreach, and when I send a connection request to someone and they click on my profile to see what I'm all about, I want them to know a little bit about what I'm about, right? I mean, I've got my banner too on my personal LinkedIn page is not a billboard for my business. If they want my resume, it's right there, right? But if they want to know who I am, they can look at that. They can see my dogs, that I live in Colorado. They can see, I mean, those things are conversation starters and potentially the seed for new relationships.
Yeah, and again, a great lesson there for anyone listening, because you're right, because social media is almost encouraged people to do the opposite, right? To be absolutely perfect and completely sort of like clean and like no flaws, no imperfections, which as we know is not true. So
Well, yes, and I certainly have my fair share of posts that are just about and adding value, but certainly along the lines of exactly what I do. Like cold email is failing and what you can do about it. Those kinds of things. So I've done plenty of those kinds of posts. Um, last Earlier this year, I put up a personal post, which I don't normally do, but it was the anniversary of my cancer diagnosis. And a lot of things had changed from that time to earlier this year when I put up that post. And so the post was not to be, a kind of sappy or anything like that. But I mean, so much changed for the better for me since that diagnosis. That's when I decided, someday may not come. We're not guaranteed anything. And so, that it was a post that talked about that I was frankly it just knocked on my back when I got that diagnosis. There weren't any symptoms. There wasn't a family history. They just found it in a routine screening. But wow, that, you know, that could be in any of us right now. We don't know how long we have. And so, if there are bigger, better things that you want to do, now's the time to be doing it. So, in any case, I put up that post that just started with something like 2-3 years ago. I was diagnosed with cancer, and it was all about that time in my life. I was going through a divorce, and there was a lot of turmoil going. I had just been laid off. There was so much happening,
wow, yeah,
which is of course, was a very low, turbulent time in my life. But sometimes we need that
yeah,
to turn things around to an entirely different place. And so I had been posting daily for months and months and months and months and months. That post got more engagement on LinkedIn. This wasn't like Facebook or Instagram where you expect people to share personal stuff. So that says to me that, all of that stuff, that's fine. It's kind of the ante. You have to kind of do that stuff to be active. But people want to know who you are and
yeah.
what you're made of. And so you have to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable, even on LinkedIn, even in a B2B space.
Yeah, no, I love that, and thank you for sharing that, because you're right, and I'm also glad you said don't put your lunch there, because I
Yeah,
agree with
right.
you putting your lunch there. But I think the authenticity and comes through, right? I don't think you can fake authenticity. There's something I call manufactured authenticity. There's a lot of that today, where people try to do what you just described, but I think you can see through the authenticity. The way you just talked about it, I can see why that was received more likes than anything else. So
Hmm.
you actually just mentioned this, and I'd like to ask you, as a cancer survivor, how has that experience sort of shaped your perspective and resilience, and leadership, both in your personal and professional life?
So it is, I mean, I talked about already how this wasn't something I was expecting. I didn't have a family history of this, and I'm very young for the kind of cancer that I had. So it was just a surprise all the way around. But where it shows up for me now is in both professionally and personally. I mean, I hate it's so cliche, but most of the things that used to really hype me up are pretty small things. And it is not worth it to disrupt your peace for probably 85% of the things that I used to allow to disrupt my peace, right?
Yeah,
Um, but it also makes me want to just really pour myself into things. If I'm going to take time out of my life to do something, I want to do it. I want to do it well. I want to do it to the best of my ability. I want to learn things and so I can do that thing better. And I just don't want to phone it in. And so it has made me live more fully since I went through that.
It sounds like in the moment, and you appreciate every moment more now than you did before.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome. That's again really great advice. So let me ask you then. So in terms of your journey in entrepreneurship, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned so far in this year and a half that you've been on this journey?
Um, well, gosh, so many. Honestly, the first thing that came into my head when you said that was, get a bookkeeper. Get a bookkeeper as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah.
It is. It makes tax time so much easier. But beyond that, do get a bookkeeper. uh, but beyond that, just be willing to or prepare yourself to be in a state of continual education, right? There's always going to be something you don't know. But the answers are out there. Lots of other people have figured it out before. So be prepared for that. The life of an entrepreneur is not, I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen every single day, right? If you've got 10 different clients, you could have, 10 different issues at 10 each one of those clients in any given day. So it's not like from that perspective, I look back at my corporate life and I pretty much could dictate or predict what every day was going to look like. Not so as an entrepreneur. So you just need to embrace that and not get too worked up when your plans get rearranged.
Yeah, so I love that advice too, because it's you basically, I think you're saying it, expect things to go wrong, right? Because they will, and you just sort of
Yeah,
roll with the punches
right.
and deal with them and like you said, 10 clients could have 10 problems on the same day, and that
Right.
happens very often.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But then you go into problem solving mode and you know how to solve those things quicker or a little bit better next time.
true. Yeah, no, those lessons are invaluable. So looking ahead, where do you see Channel Spring in the next 5 years? So what are some of the new challenges, opportunities you're excited about tackling?
Well, I haven't given up on that digital course idea. The course I had originally envisioned is probably not the right course, which is why it didn't come to fruition. But there are things that I'm doing with my clients now that even even though I really strive to make sure that my offerings are affordable for small business, for entrepreneurs, somebody just starting out, even my services are too much. And so I want to equip that newbie entrepreneur with some tools to get things started without having to have a me, but I'll train them on what I do with clients and give them the toolkit so that they can do it on their own. Yes, it takes them more time, but they're an entrepreneur and they're going to be doing that anyway. They're going to be spending a lot of time on their business. So I want to I still love working with my small to mid-sized businesses, but as a bit of a passion project, given that I was just in these shoes 18 months ago, I want to do something to really cater to that community and help them realize the dreams that they can by going out on their own. And because it takes courage to start your own thing and put yourself out there. I want to help them do it faster, better, without so many bumps in the road.
And that'll be in addition to giving them the contact of your bookkeeper, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
To start with.
Here's what you need to know
Yeah,
first.
exactly. Get a good bookkeeper. I love that.
Yes,
And actually, we should exchange notes because I'm also building a digital course for the
yes,
similar reasons. Because solopreneurs also need that help starting out, and a lot of the time they can't afford people like us.
that's right.
So,
That's right.
so let me ask you now: if you could offer one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur entrepreneur journey, what would you say to them?
You can do this. You can. It'll seem lonely. It can seem lonely. So I guess you don't. You no longer have coworkers that you can commiserate with necessarily. So surround yourself with some other people who are also working to build their own thing. so that you can commiserate a little bit, because it can feel really lonely. Because not only, in my case, not only am I trying to help my clients build their businesses, but then I'm also trying to figure out, you know, quarterly taxes and, just things that I didn't have to do in my corporate career. I never once had to touch corporate taxes. um, so those kinds of things just pile on and turn it into a 16-hour a day job sometimes. So find those people who can support you, or just listen, who can understand a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that's the one thing, and probably maybe the only thing I miss about corporate life is the people, right? And
Yes,
and and that's one of the reasons I'm building BoostSolo. So I want to build this community of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, so we have each other as sounding boards, right? It doesn't matter what industry you're in, but like you said, we can give each other advice and sometimes just be a shoulder.
yes, absolutely.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered, Anne?
I just want to reiterate that you can do this. If you've spent your entire life in corporate, you may question that sometimes, but you can do it. And you just need to find the right people to surround yourself with to remind you of that.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, people out there, take the leap. Okay, I'd love to end with a little bit of a rapid fire round. So, I'm just going to throw sort of 5 questions at you and just give us whatever comes to your mind. So, what's a corporate habit that you've had to unlearn as an entrepreneur?
I don't know if it's so much of a habit, but it is that there was that predictability in corporate, that I knew exactly what was doing that day. I could set the meetings that I wanted to set, and then, I would understand what my day was going to look like at the beginning. You just have to move past that, because that's not the way it happens.
Never a dull day, right?
Nope.
On this journey. So, if your marketing strategy was a recipe, what would be the secret ingredient?
I do think it's that humanity, right? You've got your offer may be the best one out there, but frankly, if you're a knucklehead, people don't want to work with you, right? So there has to be a mix of, absolutely, you have to have expertise, but you also have to be someone that people want to work with. They want to step alongside and get the job done.
Yeah, I agree. If your entrepreneurial journey was a golf game, I had to ask this. What hole would you be on and why?
Oh gosh. Well, I guess then that I'm only on like hole 3.
Okay.
I mean, I've gotten off the tee, and I'm not in the rough. But as with my golf game, I don't hit the ball very far. So I usually at least know where it is, and I know where I need to go.
That's good. That's good. What's the best $100 you've spent recently in your business?
In my business, on a bookkeeper, actually. It was more than that,
I
but
asked her. Yeah, that was good. So, if you could swap skills with any entrepreneur for a day, who would it be and why?
oh gosh, maybe not an oh no, Amy Porterfield, who is the name in digital courses, and she's just got this amazing digital marketing engine, outside of her courses, even all of her social media. I would take that skill set in a heartbeat.
Yeah, no, I watched a thing of hers recently. My wife put me onto that because, again, yeah, great advice. Well, and it's been so much fun chatting with you. I think
Likewise.
we might have to give away the name of your bookkeeper at the end of this once people.
I'll be happy
So
to.
just be prepared for that. But thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest and for sharing so openly.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much.